Hey, it's Sam. So I've got to build something this week at home, and I can only use scrap materials that I have lying around. Cool. A lot of this crap could get thrown away. Okay. Ugh. Avalanche. Okay, these are getting thrown out. Pull this out. Still looks pretty good.
Yeah, 13 inches at that end, so that's good.
Yeah, I measured it and it looks good. Man, this stuff's heavy.
This video is sponsored by my friends at DAP Products. I've been hoarding this piece of maple Europly Pure Bond plywood for, I think, like 4 years, ever since I made my boys' bunk beds. It's absolutely beautiful, but since the bunk beds had tapered legs, I was left with this really weird angle-shaped offcut. The first thing to do was to set up an edge guide so I could cut a nice straight line and reference all my cuts off of that. This was a really quick and simple project, so I decided instead of pulling out a track saw or a table saw, that I would just get it done using a good old circular saw. Liking what you see? Make sure you tag that thumbs up button. I tried to make my first cut run as parallel to the wood grain as I could. I then measured 13.5 inches off of that straight line all the way down the length of the board. It then was easy to set up another edge guide with a couple of clamps and make another parallel cut, giving me an 8-foot long board that was exactly 13.5 inches wide. 8 feet was actually a lot longer than I needed for this tall tree, so I made a cross cut to remove the weird handle-shaped end, but I made sure to hang on to it. My friend Mandy from Vintage Revivals had recently made these amazing plywood memo boards with a full radius arch on the top. I asked if she would mind if I borrowed some inspiration and copied her design. Luckily, she said that was okay. To make a full radius arch, you gotta start by finding the dead center between the sides of your board. Once the center was found, I lightly tapped in a finish nail. To be able to draw my arch, I grabbed a pencil and a length of nylon twine. Whether you're using rope, twine, thread, whatever, you just need to make sure that it won't stretch. Next, I wrapped the twine around the finish nail in the center of my board. I wrapped it around a couple of times and made some adjustments to make sure that my pencil reached just to the very edge across the board. Once my twine was the perfect length, I tied a knot. I held the knot on the nail with one hand, and in the other hand, I used the pencil pulling gently on the twine to make one smooth arching motion. There's several different tools you can use to cut a radius, but since I was trying to keep this a quick and simple build, I pulled out my jigsaw. I've found it's really helpful when you're cutting curves on a jigsaw to use the right blade, go slowly, and let the saw do the cutting itself. Don't push it too hard. You can find the full free building plans on my website, pneumaticaddict.com. I've found, like every time I've used a jigsaw, that I needed to do a little bit of cleaning up with a sander afterwards. I used a finish sander and 120 grit to clean up my arch. With the main back panel of the hall tree cut, it was time to address the shelf. Off camera, I grabbed that scrap piece of plywood from before and cut a semicircle shape out of it. I decided the shelf needed some support from underneath, so I decided to cut off a little triangular section from the offcut. It already had the same radius cut into it, so all I had to do is make a quick crosscut using my circular saw and a speed square. I found the center of the underside of the shelf and then began to attach the support brace. When I'm working on a quick project like this, I don't like taking hours to wait for glue to dry. I followed the little 2-glue trick that I use on almost every project. I applied DAP Weldwood wood glue to the joint area, and then followed up with a few drops of DAP Rapid Fuse CA glue. Rapid Fuse is a quick setting adhesive that grabs the wood and dries quickly, allowing me to move on and keep working while the wood glue has time to fully cure. Once I was sure the support bracket was sitting at 90 degrees and flush to the back of the shelf, I began to pre-drill through the underside. I countersunk the hole so I could hide my screw head. I thought that it was going to be hidden on the underside, but being honest, you could actually see it in the finished product more than I expected. I kind of wish I would have just used some finish nails. With the shelf assembly put together, it was time to give everything a good sanding. I sanded both the shelf and the main backboard using a 220 grit, and then it was time for finish. I really wanted to make sure that my finish had enough time to cure before I started putting pieces together. So as you can see, that meant staying up and burning some midnight oil. I used water-based polyacrylic in a satin finish from Minwax. And even though water-based finishes are beautiful, they don't yellow and they dry quickly, they do have one downside. All water-based products cause the grain of the wood to swell and raise and kind of get a rough feeling. Luckily, you can take care of that by giving the finish a light sand after the first coat. I applied 3 coats in total and then let my pieces dry overnight. The next morning, the sun was out and it was time to attach the shelf to the hall tree. On the front of the hall tree, I measured up from the bottom and made a light pencil mark indicating where the shelf should sit. If this is the first time you've watched a Pneumatic Addict video, I want to say welcome. I'm glad you're here. Take a second to make sure you hit that subscribe button and bell down below. That way you'll never miss one of my DIY projects. I flipped the board over and marked my screw locations on the back. Using a 1/8 inch drill bit, I pre-drilled through the back of the board and made sure to countersink the hole so that the screw heads would sit flush on the back. I then flipped the board back over face up. I applied a bead of Weldwood wood glue to the joint and once again added a few drops of Rapid Fuse all-purpose adhesive. I placed the shelf using my pencil mark as reference and making sure that the edges of the shelf were flush to the backboard. I let the glue cure for just a few minutes and then I flipped the board over once again, this time face down. With the holes already pre-drilled through the backboard, it was easy to drill through the back of the shelf. I drove 3 2.5 inch screws into the back of the shelf and 1 into the support bracket underneath.
Okay, I am ready to attach my mirror, but I made a little mistake. So I applied my finish to the entire board, and the problem is if I go and I use adhesive over the finish, what it's going to do is the strength of my adhesive is only going to depend on that polyacrylic attaching to my wood. I won't have a good bond. So what I got to do is sand a spot under where the mirror is going to go, and that way I can have a nice solid bond between the wood and my mirror.
Despite the fact I was really over sanding, I used a sanding sponge to quickly remove the finish where the mirror would be placed. I wiped the surface of the wood clean of any dust and then began to apply a healthy amount of Dynagrip construction adhesive. I really like the consistency of the Dynagrip adhesive. It has a really strong initial tack, so I don't have to worry about pieces sliding when I stick them together. I carefully lowered the mirror into place, and before I pressed all the way down, I used a measuring tape to ensure that I had an even 3/4 inch reveal around the entire perimeter of the mirror. At this point, my hall tree was completely built. I just needed to mount it to the wall. Whenever mounting something heavy to the wall, I always recommend using a French cleat whenever possible. You can buy ready-made metal systems that are super strong, or you can even DIY them yourself. Since we don't own the guest house that we are staying in, I had to come up with another more temporary solution, which is why you don't see me hanging my hall tree on the wall right now. Ready to see how it looks all done? The nice thing about a design like this is you can adjust the height to meet your needs. My husband and I are almost 6 inches apart in height, and yet this 12-inch mirror actually fits both of our faces just fine. Although I like the minimal look, I've decided I need to add some accessories. I've already got plans for a couple of key hooks and maybe even a purse hook on the underside of the shelf. What do you guys think? The little shelf is the perfect size to hold a couple of phones, a wallet, and some keys, but not so big that it holds a bunch of clutter. If you like simple and modern design ideas you can build yourself, make sure you check out this video. And maybe this one as well. I'm linking the playlist for the Build at Home Challenge in the description box, so you can see what dozens of other creative makers made when they had to dig through their scrap piles. Thanks, Sam, for issuing the challenge, and as always, thank you guys for watching.